Chapter 3. The Cost of Preservation. The girls hastened to put as much distance between themselves and the alleyway as possible. Picking a direction at random, they sprinted. When Violina looked back to see whether her pursuers had decided to cross into the field after them, she saw only grass where the alley had been. The gate, or portal, or whatever it was, had disappeared. "What happened? Where are we?" asked Lux with distress in her voice. "You're asking me," replied Violina haughtily. "Weren't you the one who just ran in here straight away?" Lux fought to catch her breath. "What can I say? I panicked. Jumping into an anomaly without question seemed like wisdom at the time." "Come on, let's see if we can get a better look at what we've got here." Violina pointed to a secluded grove. Desperate for answers, she climbed one of the taller trees while Lux paced back and forth, staring intently at the grass. What Violina saw only confused her more. In one direction towered the familiar cliffs surrounding Eden, but looking through the canyon, the industrialized city of golden towers as she knew it was not there. Instead, a smaller city of stone and brick sat quietly. "What do you see?" came an urgent inquiry from below. "I honestly don't know, Lux." Violina looked westward. There lay the aptly named Western Sea, exactly where it ought to have been. Turning north to the forest of cottonwood and maple trees, a mass of steam billowed from an absolutely colossal fortress unlike anything she had ever seen. Even from such a distance, she could make out the turrets and batteries of cannons lining its walls. Or had she seen it before? There was something familiar about it, but she couldn't put a finger on what it was. Lux called once more. "Just so you're aware, I'm being really super patient and I'm very proud of myself." Violina stretched her leg down to a lower branch. "I'm coming back down." "Good. I've been pondering my guts out trying to make sense of all this and have nothing." Lux stopped pacing and added in a clarifying tone. "Figuratively speaking, of course. Otherwise, that would be really gross. Anyway, please tell me that you have some insight." Violina brushed a leaf from her shoulder. "There's a city through the canyon. I think it's Eden, but... well, come on. I've got some questioning to do." Lux, obviously eager to be doing something besides standing around and speculating, agreed. As they walked along the face of the mountainside, the girls heard angry, muffled voices echoing from the mouth of a small canyon. "What's going on?" Lux climbed the nearby cliffside for a better view. "Highway robbery?" "Sounds like we're near Eden after all." Violina scaled the rocks to join her. "We should approach them from above." As they drew closer, sure enough, two men were beating a third while a restless pack horse weighed down by a bulky load stood nearby. The three men appeared to be unaware of the girl's presence.
"I told you milksops already, I have no platinum,"
shouted the man on the ground, bleeding from his face.
"'Tis a shame,"
replied one of the highwaymen.
"If all you've got is this junk, then you can't afford to keep your life."
He slammed his boot into the man's ribs while his partner stood by, running his fingers along the edge of a sword as if to examine its sharpness. Violina drew her crossbow. "You've got 1 second to drop your weapons and run." Her finger was ready on the trigger. Though she had never killed anyone before, if they hesitated, she would give them each some new holes to breathe through. "Go on, then," added Lux, admiring her nails on her left hand while pointing her crossbow with her right. "We'll give you a head start." The two startled highwaymen dropped their swords and fled. Violina eyed them until they were out of sight, then turned her attention to the wounded man. He was short, wore a waxed handlebar mustache, and didn't look capable of beating up a squirrel, let alone a couple of brutes.
"My horse! Bring me my horse! Everything could be ruined."
"You're welcome," said Lux, accepting the gratitude he had not yet given.
"For what?"
he shouted, wiping the blood from his eye.
"I said bring me my horse."
"Oh, just saving your life," said Lux, shrugging. "But yes, your horse looks like he's really pretty too, and I guess I can understand your urgent desire to reunite with it." The man forced himself onto the saddle and motioned for the girls to get out of the way.
"I've got a very important mission. The troops are depending on me. Apparently everything depends on me. No one else in this godforsaken world seems capable of doing what needs to be done."
"Wait, what are you talking about?" Violina was bewildered. "You're bleeding. What's your name?"
"Schlaupolz,"
bellowed the man, turning his steed toward the field. He then rode out of the ravine and was gone. Curious. Violina was both intrigued and annoyed that more unanswerable questions had taken up residence in her mind. And what was with the swords? Since when do people commit highway robbery with swords? I don't like this place. People are weird, said Lux, heading back to the main road. And come to think of it, even the trees are pretty weird here too. You sure you aren't the weird one? Asked Violina, raising one eyebrow. Lux picked up an acorn off the cobblestone and shook it at a nearby oak. You aren't gonna grow many baby trees on stone, you big old dumb hunk of wood. Maybe try some dirt instead? It's literally just a few feet over. She then stopped and forced herself to take a deep breath. I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit flustered with all the whatever this is. I hear you. If only Vexia didn't kill that enforcer, we would be off building our utopia instead. I know, right? Agreed Lux. To put it lightly, I quite dislike getting accused of things I didn't do. Violina kicked a stone into the grass. Join the club. I've been president of it ever since I can remember. Really, a bit melodramatic, don't you think? Lux's face was half joking, half curious. Violina found the very thought of Lux accusing her of drama amusing. Ah yes, I forgot you're the only one who's allowed to be melodramatic. Well good, then I'll forgive you this time, but maybe you should write it down so you can remember it in the future? Quipped Lux. Really though, when was the first time you were falsely accused of something? To be exact, when I was 3 years, 8 months, and a week old. Lux sounded skeptical. Seriously, Violina? This had better be a big deal if you're going to be using that kind of precision. Violina debated whether or not to even share the story, as it was something she would have preferred to forget. But after a few minutes of Lux's persistence and a repeating chorus of pretty pleases, she finally gave in. Well, my mother went to the market to get me some peach mango juice. Yes, I loved it even way back then. Then on her way home, she was involved in a steamer accident and was pronounced dead at the scene. Lux clapped her hands over her mouth. How is it you've never told me this? I prefer to focus on building bigger and better things than to dwell on the ugly. But anyway, my dear father told me that if I hadn't been so selfish to ask her for peach mango juice, she would have still been alive. He reminded me almost daily that I was the reason she died. Violina's voice was steady, but Lux's eyes were welling up. Enough emotion for the both of them as far as Violina was concerned. That's so heartless of him. Was that just his twisted way of coping? Violina laughed, but it was devoid of any humor. Sure, it was his way of coping with the fact that he was the real reason she died. He let slip that my mother knew about a heist that he and the mob were planning. From there, the mob decided she couldn't be trusted, and they had her killed in a so-called accident. Lux looked absolutely stunned. That's horrible. I'm so sorry. Violina nodded. My father couldn't handle even the thought of accountability. No, blaming it on his 3-year-old daughter was much easier. Lux shook her head. And here I was expecting a story about how some kid at school drew on the wall and you got in trouble for it. I was way off. I'm kind of surprised, though, that all of that didn't ruin peach mango juice for you. Well, I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't let someone else's poor choices ruin the things that I love. That'd be giving them way more power than I'd prefer, said Violina. Great, now all I can think of is how good a refreshing glass of juice would be. We'd better talk about something else. How about you, Lux? Any tales of traumatic, wrongful accusations as a child? Lux pursed her lips thoughtfully, then burst out with a story. There was this one time when I was taking an exam at the university, and you see, sometimes I write little pep talks on my hand like, "You can do it," in case I get anxious. Needless to say, they thought I was cheating. Oh, but there's an even better one. When I was 12, we had a classroom pet, a little corn snake named Hank, but for obvious reasons I called him Corn on the Cob, or Dr. Cobbyface for short. And how is that any shorter exactly? Come on now, I didn't interrupt your story, retorted Lux, obviously trying to dodge the question. Violina decided to just go with it. Fair enough, so what happened? Well, one day, Jerem Green was playing with Cobb and lost him. I spent all day secretly helping search, but when we found him, he was dead. Jerem then told the other students that it was me who had lost Cobb and that it was all my fault he died, and then they all went and told the instructor. It was the first day in my life that I wasn't the instructor's pet. Lux's tragic expression suddenly turned to laughter. Oh goodness, pet, get it? I didn't even do that one intentionally. So anyways, I love that snake. I've kind of had a thing for pets ever since. Well, I'm glad you didn't let some kid ruin that for you, said Violina. You know, the way I see it, someone else's poor choices shouldn't get in the way of something that makes you happy. Lux spoke as if she were teaching a valuable life lesson to a 5-year-old. Really? Violina crossed her arms. You do know that I just pretty much said the exact same thing 2 minutes ago, right? Get your own sage advice. Upon reaching the city, the girls came across a woman in golden, full-plate armor standing guard. Excuse me, could you tell us what town this is? Inquired Lux. The woman stared at her for a moment, as if uncertain whether she was serious.
This is Eden, of course.
Seeing that Lux was unsure how to respond, Violina chimed in. We're looking for the home of a man named Schlau-Poltz.
The saboteur? Well, his laboratory is around the bend in the steam stack on the roof, but I'm certain he's not there right now.
Where is he? Asked Violina, feigning ignorance.
Do you live under a rock, young lady?
Violina was getting annoyed. Let's say I do. Can you please just answer the question? The god scoffed.
I can't believe how some people are too absorbed in their own little affairs to even care about the fate of the world. Today is the day of counterstrike. Schlau is the man who knows how to disable Xaw's fortress. The High Cleric's Golden Legion will be advancing against it soon and laying down their lives for you. She narrowed her eyes. The least you can do is show a little respect and be aware of it.
Suddenly, everything clicked. Attempting to conceal her shock, Violina ended the conversation. Thank you, we must be going now. There was only one explanation, and it was as ludicrous as the rift that brought them here. Lux looked nothing short of astonished. Okay, I have no idea how it happened, but this is the Dark Ages, and Xaw is alive. Yeah, I gathered that much, said Violina. How did I not notice it before? Look up at the sky, there's only one sun. If I recall correctly, it was about a week after the day of Counterstrike that Xaw was defeated and the second sun ascended. Lux had always been a history know-it-all. But how are we even here? This whole thing is absurd. We'll have to figure out the whys and hows later. This is far worse than you probably realize. Tell me, are you familiar with the butterfly effect? Asked Violina. Lux shrugged. Should I be? Well, I suppose not. I never thought it would be anything beyond useless philosophy until now. Imagine that a butterfly flaps its wings, and the slight breeze it creates sends pollen into a rhino's nose. This then causes it to sneeze, which causes a gazelle to flee in fright, which causes a lion to take notice and eat it, and so on. You could say the butterfly caused the gazelle to die. Okay, so you're talking about causality. Exactly, affirmed Violina. Every action is caused by a preceding action and causes another one to follow. It's a chain of events that extends through millions of years and is responsible for all things taking place as they ever have or ever will. Now, if someone were to change a link in that chain, say, by swatting the butterfly before it could flap its wings, the gazelle would have survived. Lux folded her arms. Okay, so why is this worse than you think I realize? Think about it, Violina implored. Granted, the world would largely stay the same for days or even years, but what if you were to extend the chain to 1,000,000 years? The entire world would be a totally different place than it otherwise would have been. Judging by the sudden look of fear across Lux's face, her brain had put the pieces together. Oh, please heavens no. You're telling me that because we saved that Schlau guy's life, he might hasten Xaw's defeat, which would completely change the world we know 500 years from now? Lux cupped her hands to her mouth in shock. Even our very existence could be erased. Everyone and everything we know could vanish. Violina nodded. But there's still a way we can fix this. A terrible way, but we may have no choice. How? To use the butterfly example again. If after swatting the butterfly, a man were to take the pollen that was no longer able to be flapped into the rhino's nose and placed it there himself, it would still sneeze. The sequence of events would go right back to leading to the gazelle's death. So what are you saying? Asked Lux, now horrified. The day of Counterstrike was a complete disaster and thousands of the High Cleric soldiers were killed. Are you saying we need to kill all the people that Xaw was going to? Violina drew her hydraulic hammer and powered it up. If we're fast enough, we'll only need to kill one man. Schlau-Poltz.